to pick up
Thursday, and then you're supposed to be here on Friday?
July 1st, sir. Extended summer visitation is supposed to begin today, 6 p.m.
Okay. All right. Well, if he's not coming out.
I'd like to file a criminal offense report.
On how? On her for what?
Violation of Penal Code 2503.
Okay. So you're going to try to say she's impeding your child custody?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is the 35th time I've called you guys out for the same thing.
You're about to probably keep calling us out because I promise you the DA is probably not going to take that charge.
I'd like to be told that by the DA then.
Well, you can call the DA. I mean, I'll call him.
Okay.
But since you guys are going back and forth in court, then
she's just been, the judge has just signed the second contempt order against her, and the third is in the works.
So let me ask this question, just out of sheer curiosity. So you want me to file charges on her?
Yes.
So that I take her to jail, right?
Yes.
Do you think that's going to make it better?
I'm not asking
kids?
you for your parenting advice or your legal advice, sir. I'm asking you to take a report of a crime.
All right. I'll go make a phone call.
My name is Chanel Smith. I have a 4-year-old son with the other parent. We were getting along for the last 4 years. We do have a custody order. On the order, it specifically states that we can schedule as we please as long as both parties agree. It's the first paragraph on my order. If we do not agree, then they have the standard order that we will follow. Especially since my son isn't in school. That usually goes for kids that's not in school yet and things like that. So he was only 4. And so everything was going good. I'll drop my son. We'll go, I worked a lot. The other parent didn't. So I dropped my son off to the other parent's sister house, which is my son's aunt. That's how we did it for 4 years. I would drop him off there. The father would come there, see him. Supposedly the father lived there, but I had a feeling he didn't always was there, but that was supposed to be his address. So he'll go, visit, things like that. Everything was good. We'll alternate holidays, birthdays, things like that. We just agreed on it. But one day, September 28th, that was the date I'll never forget, September 28th, 2020, I text the sister because I always check up on him when he's with the sister. Like, how's Antonio doing? His nickname was Blue. How's Blue doing? Did he eat today? How he doing? Let me speak to him. We'll do voice clips, videos, FaceTime, things like that. So that day, she said his father came and picked him up. I said, okay, let me text him. I text him, no response. Finally, some hours later, I did get a response and he said, I will call you right back. That was the text response. I said, okay, but where are you? Because I was supposed to come get the baby at this time. I was like, where are you? I'm supposed to be coming to get Blue today. He said, I'll call you back. After that, it went silent. He was getting my red receipts. I was blowing up his phone. I was blowing up the sister's phone. The sister will always answer, like, he's with his dad. He's safe. But the dad would not respond to me. We both have iPhones. I see he had his red receipts on. He would not respond to me. So I said, okay, I'm going to make a police report. That was me unknowingly. I was like, I'm going to make a police report because I know I waited a week, though. I said, I'm going to make a police report because it's been a week. And I was actually worried. At this time, I didn't think that he kidnapped him. I was actually worried, like, did something happen to them? Because this was kind of weird to me. So I was like, did something happen to them? In my head, I was worried. So, I called the cops. What actually made me call the cops when I stopped getting worried, though, I don't know if you know, they have these apps. I impersonated the sister's number, and he answered, and I said, hello, this is Chanel. He hung up on me. That's what made me call the cops. So I said, I'm going to call the cops. So I called the cops and I'm, explaining to the cop what happened. And the cop was like, did you get a new boyfriend or something? Like, why would he act like this? I'm like, I don't know. He just disappeared. And he was like, well, it's always best to follow the order. Even though the first paragraph says, and I actually showed the cop in a paragraph where it says, law enforcement may enforce this order. It's a big old paragraph. I showed him that. I said, y'all, it says this on the thing. Because he kept saying this is a silver matter. I'll make a report for you. Most of the time, you just show the parent that you made a report, it'll scare them, and he'll bring the baby back. So he made the report for me. He's like, next time, maybe you should follow the order, because sometimes that could be held against you when you go to court. That's what he was telling me. So I screenshotted the report, the offense report. At this time, I didn't know. I just figured it's illegal, but I didn't know anything about 2503 or none of that. I had the first offense report. I screenshot it. I sent it to the other parent. He had his red receipts on. He seen that I screenshot, and no answer still. So I'm like, okay. And I still, text them like, where are you guys? This is illegal. Contacted legal aid. One lawyer, she finally told me, time is the essence. She said, you got 6 months before they try to say, oh, it's in his court, no matter what, something about abandoning your child, 6 months, you got 6 months. So that's when I really was like, oh no, I'm going to call the cops every day. So she's like, she's the one that taught me. She said, when you text the other parent, just text him on your days, like your days that it goes on the order. She said, tell him that you no longer agree to the order. So the first text after that I said, I no longer agree to this order because you taking the child. I don't agree to, we now have to follow the order. I actually screenshotted the order to him as well. I took a picture of the court order, I sent it to him, and I showed him the days. And she told me not to show no emotions when I text him and things like that. So I just would text him only on my days. On his days, I won't text him, things like that. But I'll always text him. I'll tell him, it's my day to see the child. Legal aid really helped me. They told me what to file. I was going through custody groups on Facebook, and things like that. Let me skip back though. The second time I did a missing persons, I still didn't know what 2503 was. When he didn't, I waited a couple of more weeks after I seen all the lawyers. I did contempt in court. All of that was rejected from the judge. I stayed on the docket. They didn't help me. I filed another report. This is my second report. I did a missing person. That's like, my child is missing, because at this time, I still haven't heard from him. I had no idea where he was. The sister said he's with the dad, but I had no address. I literally did not know where they was at. He wouldn't respond to me either. So I was like, my child is missing. So the sergeant came out with a rookie. They both came out, and the sergeant was like, yeah, this is, dangerous. I know, because I was telling them that the other child's father was a truck driver. So he was like, yeah, this is dangerous. Some people go out in the country, across state lines. We're going to do missing. So they took his social. They asked me what the child was wearing. They said they was going to try to do an Amber Alert. I thought everything was set. I got the missing paper. My friends started making a missing flyer. Not even 20 minutes. The rookie called me, was like, we are not gonna do the missing person. I'm like, what? And he was like, yeah, I guess it's the missing people that does the Amber Alerts. They refuse to do it. They was like, he was like, call them because they won't do it for us. We have to go through them. So I called them, and I'm like, well, the cop said, and she was like, well, both parents. He's also another parent. It don't matter if y'all got a court order. It's a family. It's a civil matter. Just go snatch your child back. Y'all both can do it. If you see him on the street, you see him at the store, just snatch him back. But this is not a legal matter. This is not illegal. Y'all both have rights to the child. Even though it was a court order, it's like y'all both have rights to the child. You could just snatch him back. Y'all can snatch back and forth. And I'm like, huh? That don't sound right. But she was like, yeah, we're not going to do it. Hung up on me. Because I asked for a supervisor, she hung up on me. Okay, that's weird. So that second report didn't go through. So the contempt, and I asked for emergency trial, that just stayed on the docket. It never got seen yet or nothing like that. So at this time, while that's staying on the docket, I still, even though they said they was gonna make that missing person, I still have my flyer. So I still put my flyer all over. I posted it all over Facebook. I tagged him on Facebook. I made a YouTube video letting everybody know what my story, what happened, and things like that. He actually deactivated his page because strangers was hitting him up like, where's this girl child? Like even strangers was hitting up. So he deactivated his page, as well as during the missing person, when they was going to do it, they asked for his Facebook. So they actually was researching his Facebook until they decided not to do the missing person. So he deactivated his page. So now I have no Facebook with him. I have no, he took his red receipts off. So he took his red receipts off and he actually blocked me. He blocked me from his phone, so I couldn't get in touch with him, but I still text him every day. I still text. Things like that. And then I was so when I was putting the missing flyers on Facebook, a group member from 2503 named Cecilia reached out to me. And she was like, this is 2503. This is illegal. You need to look this up. And she was like, going to this group, Texas 2503. And she pinged George. So I went to, George hit me up and I told him my story. He gave me some templates to look at. I studied those templates and I'm like, okay, this is, 2503. This is illegal. So he's like, look at your other reports that you got. I looked at my other reports. It did say offense 2503. So he was like, go call them now. Tell them you want to missing person and tell them you want to file 2503. Make sure you have the paper printout, read it to them and things like that. So I called the cops the third time. I said, I reached out to the group. The third time that I called the cops was at the sister's house, precinct 7. I'm precinct 4. So I've been dealing with precinct 4. I went to precinct 7 before I reached out to the group. So when I went to her house, I said, maybe it'll work if I call where I dropped the child at. So I go over there. I'm like, I'm here to get my son. She was like, I already told you not here. He was his dad. So I called the cops. The cops came. When the cops came, they was like, they was gonna press harassment charges on me for coming over there. I explained them. I had my order. They actually called the dad and he answered. He said, yeah, we going through a custody battle. I had custody of him since he was younger or whatever. I had custody of him since he was newborn. We going through a custody orders. And I think they wouldn't tell me the rest of what he said, of course, because he wasn't on speaker. So the supervisor came back to me and the other cop was like, yeah, we could press harassment charges on you. And I had a witness with me. I brought my neighbor. He was like, yeah, we could press harassment charges. Don't come back over here. You have to go to family court for this. And the other cop made it personal, like, yeah, I remember when my baby mother, I'm on child support too. This all about child support, huh? That's what he asked me. He's like, I have a 12-year-old daughter. I'm waiting till my daughter turn 12. That's what he told me. I'm waiting for my daughter to turn 12, and that's when she gonna have to stay to come live with me. But all these baby mothers, it's like he had a vendetta against mothers kind of thing. That's how he was talking. Like, and the witness was like, this is not about you. He's like, you be quiet, and he was like, y'all gonna have to go. And I was like, okay, well, precinct 4 told me to maybe come over here and make a report. He's like, yeah, they lazy. Go over there and make a report. If you come back over here, we'll have you arrested for harassment. So I left, and then that's when I found the group and things like that. And then so that it was actually 4 reports. So the 4th report is when the precinct 4 came out, and I said, y'all letting this man get away with a felony? Like, this is illegal. And I start reading the code, and the cops was looking at me like, what? They didn't even know what that was. They didn't even know it was illegal. They was like, okay, go in the house. So when I was in the house, I was peeking through the blinds, and I have cameras. So I heard them like saying, I didn't even know this was illegal. Is this really illegal? And they was sitting there for like 25 to 30 minutes reading them codes. I seen them outside. They was reading the codes, going back and forth. So they finally called the DA, the assistant DA, which is Beth Barron. They called Beth Barron, and she was like, how long it's been going. At this time, it's been 3 months since he had the child. So she was like, how long, he's been going? She was like, you don't have no CPS cases, no, nothing in family court? I said, no. So I said, but I got text messages. I've been texting them all this time. And she was like, text messages? I said, yeah, I even have where he had the red receipts. I was showing the other cop. And I said, you see right here, he said, And one of the text messages, when he finally did respond, maybe like a month later, he said, if you don't drop the child support, then I'll make it bad for you. Something like that, kind of like a threat. So she was like, he said that? I said, the other cop was like, yeah, I'm reading it. I'm reading all her messages and I'm reading the rare receipts and everything. So she said, okay, let me look up the order, because they was talking about my order. For some reason, the judge forgot to sign my order. So the DA does have access to look at the order because she did it for me. She said I could look up the order in my system and I can see if there's any litigation in family court. She's like, I could look up all of that. So she sat there. She was like, nope, he don't got no cases in family court. Nope, she don't got no cases in family court. This is the only order that they have. And she was like, tell him he has until 5 o'clock to bring that baby back or we pursuing charges. And she said, email all those text messages to the investigating officer. And the officers was talking to each other like, oh my God, this really is illegal. Okay. So he called him. The other parent didn't answer. He left him a message. I heard him leave him a message saying that, you know, you have until 5 p.m. to bring the baby back. Left him a message and he told me, we'll come back in a couple of hours and see if he either brought the baby back or at least contacted you. So they left, they came back. Of course, he didn't contact me. He didn't bring the baby back. So they was like, okay, so we will now be pursuing charges. So I said, okay. They was like, we're going to have a warrant out for his arrest. The next day, I get a knock on my door with CPS. So they pursued charges. It was like around 2 something. He called CPS at 3:15 exactly. So when the CPS lady, I pulled out all the offense reports I had. I pulled out the investigating officer email because of us emailing back and forth. And I'm like, he got a warrant. He did this out of spite, thinking because the DA said you don't have no CPS charges, no family. He thought that was gonna help him. So the CPS workers like, after a whole month of you having him, why are you just now making a CPS report? Why are you just now doing this? So she closed the case literally in 1 day because she called the investigating officer. She did go see my son. She said, I have to go see the child. She went to see the child. When she was over there seeing the child, she called the investigating officer and gave him the address. She said, this is the address. Put it on the case. So the investigating officer said they still couldn't go get him. I think he was in Katy. It was a different jurisdiction at that time. So he said he'll put it on the case. He can't just physically go get him though. They still can't do that. So I'm like, okay. So he's like, I'll just put it on the case. I put the address. So the CPS lady was like, I'm closing this case in 1 day because with CPS, she was like, we could get subpoenas. They basically didn't want nothing to do. When they heard 2503 felony, they was like, we don't got nothing to do with this case closed. We'll let the felony, the court handle it or things like that. So I called it. So once charges were pursued, I did my victim statement or whatever, because the receptionist from the DA or whoever do the victim statements and things like that, handle the victim, she called me and she did say, you don't have your child yet? I said, no. She said, I'm going to tell you the truth. This will be like a year process, at least a year, before you get any type of assistance, like with jail time or anything, unless he gets court. And I'm like, okay, dang. So she's like, yeah, I can tell you that. But, he do have a warrant. It is, because it took like a week for the warrant to actually come after. He's like, you do got a warrant and wop the wop. So I'm like, okay. So I text the sister because I had got a letter in the mail from the sheriff department. I text the sister it had the charges. I screenshot it and sent it to her. And then I said, I'm about to do a missing persons report. So I called the 1-800 missing. I had a representative there because he's like, they did charges. I was like, yeah. Once he knew they did charges, he was like, okay, send me the picture. We'll help. He said, call the sheriff again and try to get him missing. So I called them again. The same cop, the same rookie from the first time, he came back. He thought I was lying when I said, nah, they got charges. He was like, what? He was so shocked. His eyes was big. He's like, how did you get charges? How did you get charges? I said, because it's a felony. That's how. So Thanksgiving Eve, I seen a knock on my door. I look out the blinds. It's him. He dropped off the baby on my stoop and left. So the baby was on my stoop. I actually have a video on 2503 the day he came home. I made a video and I posted it and let everybody know, because it was a lot of people like, oh, what's going on? So I made a video the day he got dropped home with him on the video. The whole family was out. We were so happy. So I did make a video of that. And after he dropped him off, he did a non-arrest bond. So he went and did a non-arrest bond. So he was out on bond. And the next court date, he had stipulations. They did a bail stipulations where he couldn't come around the address, the doctor's office, or the daycare, or my address. And then maybe like 2 months later, when he went to court, the other stipulation was they took, because he could only text at that time. He could text the baby and that's it. So when he went back, they lawyer got him where he could see the baby now on his days, but it had to be with exchange through a third party. We back to, I don't know if we're gonna start back acting crazy or if we're gonna try it again or things like that. But I did pull up the record and it shows why the charges are dismissed. So it doesn't just say it was dismissed because nothing was found. It says it was dismissed because he completed the steps that he was supposed to complete. So they do have that in bold letters when you pull it up, when you pull the actual case up. So that was good. And I am glad that I found 2503. I'm not gonna lie, because with their assistance and the things that I already did, it educated me more. I appreciate George because it helped me. It really did help me. Okay, so I do want to let all the parents know, keep fighting. It is hard. I'm gonna tell you, so when my son left, a lot of people was like, "How can you stay so strong?" I was so depressed. I almost lost my job. I almost lost my job that I was on for about 5 or 6 years. I almost lost that job because I couldn't work. I had anxiety. I had suicidal thoughts. Parents go through this mental anxiety of, not seeing your child. That is real. I went through that for the first time. So, but I never gave up. Every day I felt like giving up. I'm like, dang, this ain't working. The cops was the worst experience. Out of all of the experience was the cops and family court. Those two was the worst two experiences. Neither one would help me like I thought they would. You don't know until you're in this position. So I want all parents to know, just never give up, because you never know. Like me, I didn't think I was going to get the outcome I got. It just happened. You know what I'm saying? So never give up. Keep fighting. People see the fight and they want to help you, because I got a lot of support because I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. I kept fighting. Even when the cops didn't want to help me, I made my own missing person flyers. So, I made my own YouTube video. We do still have a long way to go. I'll tell you that. We still have a long fight to do and a long way to go. So.
Hi, I'm Derek Berry, Reverend Derek Berry, and just wanted to take some time to tell you guys about my personal experience with the family court system. And it's almost a 10-year battle with 5 attorneys, and I have 3 beautiful and amazing children, all under the age of 11. And, it's my story is your story. We all share that in common. But I wanted to take some time to tell you all about, I guess, my part of it, what led me to take the necessary steps into vocalizing, into taking action as a single father. I suppose the first time I felt something was wrong was, first with the family court system. And people have this misconception where they're going to have their due process and their day in court, and they're going to be able to prove their side of the argument and validate some feelings and actions and things that took place. But for anyone who's ever been through the family court system, they know and understand that that isn't the case. And it's one of the biggest obstacles I think a parent overcomes, a mother or father, is that they're taken back by the process. once they're involved. And once they're involved and knee deep in it, they're so immersed that you don't understand. You don't understand the process. You don't understand how things work, the terminology, the verbiage, and everything starts spinning. It happens all so fast, and you're just dumping money into a system trying to get results. And you're naive, you're ignorant. In family court, I remember begging the judge, because I wanted to baptize my children, so I wanted some time on Sundays. And, there I am begging and almost in tears, and the judge tells me there's nothing that he can do. Have no criminal record. I don't even have as much as a speeding ticket in the past 20 years. And it blew my mind. I didn't understand. This wasn't a conflict of interest between the mother and I. We're the same religion. We were raised, both in the same religion and in Catholic households. So it wasn't a question of, two faiths or, an indifference. It was just simply the judge was not budging from the standard, from a standard possession order. I think that was one of the moments, as far as family court's concerned, that kind of spurred everything. It drove me deeper into my faith. It's the reason that I obtained reverendship, so I could baptize my children, my very own children, and remain active in the church. I knew something was wrong. I mean, how is that in the best interest of the children when you're denying the opportunity to take them to church? I mean, to serve in their faith, to continue their moral obligation as a parent, and trying to bring your children upright, and you're being denied that opportunity for no other reason than the judge saying I can't. There was no reasons presented. I got copies of all the transcripts and everything and went over them. He never said one way or the other than he can't. And, that bothered me. Other things, other flags that kind of indicated something was wrong. No matter how hard I fought, again, almost 10 years and 5 attorneys, and my last attorney being an appellate's attorney to try to correct everything that had gone wrong within the family court system. It took that much fight and that much money to get a 45-55 split. I mean, you're talking no criminal record, again, no speeding ticket, amazing father, I'd like to think so. And, no reasons. There was no reason given. There's no, mental health issues. There's no medical issues. I'm a loving, able, willing father who is trying to remain active, who is being kept at an arm's distance away. It was concerning, it's once you're in it, you start understanding and realizing how twisted things can get and how these parents fall down this rabbit hole and get labeled a bad parent, or get labeled or mislabeled rather a bad parent. So times I've been kept from my children, even with a current valid order. My fight began early in 2013. We had one child together at the time, and of course there was some we tried to reconcile, and things didn't work out again. And we had 3 beautiful children, but at times the courts like to label high conflict case, and I think they overuse that terminology. You have 2 people that sometimes don't get along. Sometimes people change. Sometimes people lie. And for whatever the reason, May of 2017, I was trying to exercise Father's Day possession, and I had a hard copy of my valid court orders. I showed up on site to pick up the children, and I had called for a custodial standby with little to no response. So there I am, street side, curbside, with my copy in hand of my order. and the officer, a veteran officer, PD, walks right past me and goes straight to the mother, who's, you know, in tears and yelling and screaming and whatnot, and, you know, asks to see if she's okay. And, you know, it's ironic, right? It's very stereotypical. And then he approaches me in a very authority way, you know, kind of standing over me and in my personal space. And first words out of his mouth towards me were, you know, what seems to be the problem? What's the problem here? And I was, you know, proceeded to tell him as professional and kindly as possible that I was just merely there to pick up my children for Father's Day weekend. And if he needed, I had a copy of the order to show him, and didn't want to take the order, didn't want to see it, was very dismissive and says, well, that's not what she says. She says you're here causing problems and that the kids don't want to go with you, and that she's fearful that you won't return the children. And I said, well, I'm sorry that she's lying to you, but that's not the case at all. I'm entitled to my children. I'm entitled to Father's Day weekend. She knew that I was coming. I called you guys earlier for a custodial standby, for visitations, custodial standby. And I'm here trying to pick up my children. If you look, you can run my license. There's no criminal history. There's no pending litigation. There's not a warrant for my arrest. There's nothing in your system on me. There's no history at this address of domestic violence. There's no history on my personal record. This is a fabricated story because she simply doesn't want the children to go with me. And unfortunately, it's not up to her. I have a court order signed off on by a judge that Father's Day, like millions of other fathers, they get Father's Day weekend. And, you know, that also kind of rang with me as a significant event, because here I am, you know, and I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But a good dad, a clean record, just trying to pick up his kids to spend some time with them, you know, cookout, barbecue at my folks' place. And I'm being told I can't over a fabrication, over some little white lies, all because an individual feels empowered by the court because they're the custodial parent, and no other good reason than that. Just that they're mad, they're upset, they don't like me. I don't know, but it's all irrelevant. And that's not why I was there. I was there to pick up the kids. That's concerning to me. That worries me that other parents, fathers and mothers, are going through the same thing. And, you know, it got me thinking, like, what if all these things that we're labeling these parents and mislabeling these parents and overusing these terms like high conflict and, you know, she's crazy or he's abusive. What if it's all by design? You know, what if the courts are encouraging this kind of behavior, one, to generate revenue, and two, to perpetuate the conflict, to some form of job security. At the same time, it's a double-edged sword, because now you're labeling one parent the victor and one the loser. You know, I got a crazy mom over here, and I got an abusive dad, and you're muddying the waters intentionally, just so you can keep your cash for kids scam going. You know, and parents don't have any other resolution but to get an attorney, to go back to litigation, to go back to court.
That's understood, but as you said, child disbursement and child visitation and access are two separate independent topics. Regardless of the money scenario, no parent should be denied and no child should be denied both loving parents.
I agree with you. I just think maybe, passing this law, then mom will be able to serve dad at that time so that she can get the enforcement and put his ass in jail for being $10,000 behind on child support. So I mean, I guess it's a better way for mom to find dad as well, to get,
make him escalates the process and
hold him
provides a
accountable.
resolution.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Members, any other?
Burden of proof is on the other parent to say that is not in the best interest of the child. So now the other parent has to prove and bring in all the evidence saying, no, dad lives 50 miles away from school and they've been late to school the last 3 days out of the week or whatever. So you have to now prove all of that stuff prior, and that's not the way it works right now, correct?
That's correct. I mean,
this may surprise you, but I'm a feminist, and
it does surprise me.
But it bothers me so many times. I hear my clients who are male say, you know, I can't get my kid, she won't let me get my kid, and the children are absolutely missing out. And it's all about money, right? Whoever has the money to go to court. The reality is family law is a business, and that's the horrible part of it, because it's about
which has prevented other legislation.
Yeah, Texas 2503, you know, how did we meet? How did we get started? Where are we at? What did it look like early on? How did I get involved? I started off just as anyone else, a concerned parent. I was at the courthouse and having a hearing date, custodial hearing date, right? One of many. And I bumped into George, who happened to already have established and founded Texas 2503. And early on, very early on, I think at the time we met, I mean, he may have had like 30 parents. And if you knew where we at today, I mean, I think we're almost 12,000 alone in a private group. And then, you know, hundreds of thousands of advocate agencies and other advocates and parents Texas-wide and actually nationwide. And we've even made some friends, you know, across the pond and in other countries. So it's crazy to go back and say like, yeah, we had like 30 parents. It's no longer 30 parents, you know, it's thousands and thousands of folks, moms and dads, you know, parents that have current valid legal custody, but have access issues. So Texas 2503 is Texas Penal Code 2503, interference with child custody. It is, in short, retainment of the child, right? If mom or dad goes out on site, they have a valid court order, they go to pick up and exercise their access and possession time with their child, and then they're being told no. Well, we took issue with that, right? So parental alienation, you know, it's a relatively new term. I think as I got more involved into helping parents and more involved into looking at the system, that term became more relevant, right? It became, is there a scientific definition? Is there, you know, medically trained mental health care professionals that understand this, that know it inside and out, that can define it? And why isn't our court system acknowledging it? Started researching it as a parent. You know, there's some countries that recognize it. I think it was Brazil and a few others that they recognize it as criminal, parental alienation. It's intentionally basically keeping your child away from the other parent. And the World Health Organization at the time was going over parental alienation and thought to define and label it and assign it. And I think that has yet to materialize, but that also opened my eyes to the fact that this isn't just a Texas problem. This isn't just a US problem. This is a worldwide issue that stretches far and vast. Parental alienation is very real, and there's extremes, right? There's dads that are being kept you know, away from their exercising their access and possession for the weekend just because simply mom wants to do something else. And then there's moms being demonized and criminalized repeatedly, and you know, sometimes they're threatened with caseworkers and social studies and adeliums and CPS cases. I'm going to get CPS involved. We don't believe you. We think you're a bad mom, and you know, they complicate things as much as possible and wrap it all in red tape for no other reason that they need a victor, and you know, they need to assign a non-custodial, a loser. And that's the stereotype behind it, right? If you're labeled a non-custodial parent, you are somehow less than. If you're even, it doesn't matter if you're a mom or dad, they view you as less than. And parental alienation, PA is getting a lot of traction. It's very real. I think there's extremes. There's minor cases to where you're just kept again for a weekend, and it's still traumatizing to the child. And then there's some extreme cases where you know, I've met parents that are kept away from their kids for a lifetime. You know, the damage is done. These kids age out, they become adults, and God willing, they become, you know, functioning members of society, but the damage is already done. And if we don't revisit, and this is my personal belief, if we don't revisit shared parenting and starting on an equal playing field as a standard, as a national standard, every parent starting off with, you know, independent rights and duties and equal shared parenting, possession and access times, I think that would remove a lot of the conflict. I think that would help a lot of parents. And the reason why we don't do it, again, it goes back in because, excuse me, but it's cutting into their business. I think that's the real reason why we don't adopt it, why a lot of folks turn a blind eye to it and they don't want to revisit it or acknowledge it, because we're right. You know, the data, the statistics, the scientific studies behind it, the financials, the financial records and information polls that happen, they all lead to it, you know, it being more successful for parents to have a shared parenting starting point, but it's bad for business. It cuts into the money-making aspect of it and generating revenue under Title 4D. And it's sad. That has nothing to do with best interests of our children. That has zero to do. They need to find another money-making scam. Our children are no longer for sale. It's as simple as that. They've upset enough people and have crossed enough lines and have been blatant with their neglect and their greed that the tide's changing. You know, parents are done. They're done watching their children hurt. They're done with a broken system that's beyond repair. Reform is needed yesterday, and for no other reason than we don't want our children to go through this anymore. We don't want them to be victims of PA. How have I been treated? I guess personally from the school officials and from the police. Well, school officials, every year I go through the same thing. If I don't register the children, if I don't make an effort to have my orders on file with the administration, with the office, despite what's legislated, despite my parental constitutional 14th, despite having a current valid court order, despite being their biological father and on their birth certificates, every year is a challenge at school. Now, some of the administration and some of the teachers understand that children nowadays have two-parent households. And I work with those individuals. I appreciate the teachers who understand. But every year, without fail, there is an administrator or a teacher that doesn't acknowledge the dad, me. They leave me out of email communications. They leave me out of the school designated apps. They leave me out of any kind of special events. I have to fight tooth and nail This year, just this year, I had to request several times to be given the school app information. Sometimes it'll vary depending on your children's school. Sometimes the grades will use, different apps. But this year, I think each child and each teacher, they ended up using the same app. And 2 out of the 3 teachers gave me the information that I needed to sign on to be able to communicate. And one particular would not respond. I called and left messages. I emailed. I went down and talked to the vice principal and finally got a response. And things have gone decent since, right? So the police, right? How am I treated by the police? My experiences with the police, and we've all had them, right? And especially when you're doing the custodial exchange and custody stuff, it's mixed. It's a mixed response in all honesty. And there is no rhyme or reason to it. It's not, veteran officers and rookie officers. It's not male and female. Sometimes I get a great response out of rookie officers that are just learning the ropes, right? That they're easy to talk to and they want to learn and they understand, a part of the law or what, how a court order is supposed to operate. And sometimes you'll get maybe a veteran that is just used to the status quo and has a very rigid thought process on how to do things. So I've experienced the gambit, man. I've experienced from one extreme to the other. I've had officers and deputies work with me and totally supportive and understanding because, maybe themselves were going through a divorce or custody issue and they wanted to learn a little bit about, what it is that I know or how things were going. A very personable exchange, right? And then there's the other extreme where you're told to get lost. And I don't care why you're here. It doesn't matter. Y'all need to go take that back to court. It's a civil matter, go back to court.
On Friday preceding Father's Day.
Yeah, so in this case, what happens in this case is I can write a report for you. Then you get that report, you take it back to your lawyer and say, hey, look, they failed to abide by the
I'm not leaving until I get my daughter.
Well, I'm just saying that's how it's going to work.
Okay.
I can call my supervisor to double check, but that's how it's going to work. Some people don't like it. I'm not here to enforce it. You know what I mean? This is a civil matter.
That's the law. Well, this is the law.
But it's a civil matter, though.
But it is a court order.
Yeah, but this is a civil matter between you, her, your lawyer, her lawyer, the judge, whoever signed it.
But you see in black and white right there.
I do see it. I see it right here. Yes, sir.
Did I get my daughter?
Yes, I see it right here.
All right.
6 p.m.
So
Monday,
can you go
8
knock on the door? You might want to search for the drugs.
I'm going to knock on the door. I'm going to make contact with them, figure out what's going on. But worst case scenario, you're probably just going to get a case number and that's it. And go home empty-handed if they say no.
Okay. Be calling us for this kind of stuff. So it'll run from one extreme to the other. And I've learned throughout the years, it's very important on how you conduct yourself, how confident you are in your ability, how well spoken on the topic that you are, and how much you remove the emotion, right? If I think I talk about that a lot, but when you're overly excited or when you're emotional, you usually have a tendency not to make the most rational decisions. And that goes for everybody. If you talk to them like a person and you explain to them what's going on from a factual standpoint, from a law perspective, from a rights perspective, from, hey, I am here on premise because I have a current valid court order signed by a judge that tells me I'm supposed to be here to pick up my children. And I'm at the right place, right time, right location. I just want to pick up my kids. Can you help me out? And, a lot of times you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar.
He prefers you don't stay the night. He's willing to give you a complete refund, and then we can criminal trespass you off the property. So if you want to go get your refund, we can go up there now and get your refund.
So you can give me a criminal trespassing? No, I'm not going to do that.
It's going to be on there. I'm telling you what's going to happen. It's going to be on there. So anytime you come back out here,
I'm
you won't be
not
arrested.
trespassing if I paid to be here.
I'm just saying, he wants you out of here because you're going to be causing havoc all night long.
Why would I be causing havoc all night?
You're doing it right now.
No,
You're parked right outside this lady's house.
So let me get this straight, Mr. Blue in the face. Me with a court order in my hand.
Yes, sir.
Here to collect my daughter, which said court order says that I have the right to. I'm the one causing trouble?
They don't want you here, man. That's the way it is.
Well, they should turn my daughter over.
She's not going to give her to you, man.
Well,
so, like I said, I'll give you a case number here. I'll write you a nice little report, but that's all you're going to get out of us. Okay. We cannot physically take her out.
That's all I can expect. I mean, I know. I mean, that's how the system is.
Yes, sir.
The court gives a court order that is supposed to be enforced. But you guys are quick to pull your guns and beat the shit out of us, but you won't go and enforce a order that's already been going. So that the system is made to where I have to go get the attorney, pay a ton of money,
right,
and get it enforced.
Yes, sir. That's the way it is. There's nothing criminal going on here. Right, this is all civil. This is all an agreement.
So I'm not criminally trespassing. You just said it.
You're criminally trespassing because the owner didn't want you on the property. Well, so, like I said, you're more than welcome to get your money back. The owner shouldn't have sold me a pass, and I'm not. He didn't recognize you until the last minute. He said.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't matter. He's still. I got a receipt in hand.
Okay. Well, he doesn't want you on the property. He's willing to give you a complete refund, and if you want to just take your receipt and get your refund, you can do that. If not, then
so I take my refund, and that's when you can give me a criminal trespassing.
I'm going to give it to you right now, anyways.
Well, I'm not signing nothing because
you don't have to sign it.
I'm not criminally trespassing.
You don't have to sign it, sir. I'm verbally telling you right now. Okay. So when I write my report, I'm going to do what's called a proximity restriction. And every time we come up here and run you out here, or she says you're out here and takes a picture of you out here, you will be arrested on the spot.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just telling you how it's going to work. Okay.
But I think key is just to maintain your composure and have your hard copies and have your thoughts ready to go and be able to talk to them.
I'm supposed to see my daughter here from 1 to 3 p.m. I haven't seen my daughter in about a year. The mother basically withholds her. So basically when I make these calls, I usually do it over the phone, but when I came across the Texas Penal Code 25.03, interference with child custody, basically a person that commits an offense, if a person takes or retains a child younger than 18 years of age, basically leads up to like a state felony.
So he's trying to just make the felony report.
So I'm just trying to make the felony report because it's been a year since I've seen my child.
I understand. So the issue is that child custody is civil, and we are criminal police officers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So have you contacted an attorney? As far as
we actually talked to the sheriff just like a week ago, and he told us to file the felony report. That's the sheriff.
That's through the sheriff.
No, but he told us to come here for visitation.
Yes.
He said when she doesn't show up, call the police and file the felony police report. That's what he told us.
I'm gonna let you know it's full of shit. So here,
the sheriff is
give that. Yes.
Okay.
So
even though it says it's a felony,
as far as yes. So the issue is that it's civil.
Okay.
We can't file those. We're criminal police officers.
Yes, and that's why we're trying to file the felony police report. That's what the.
So what has to happen is, since it's child custody, it has to go through the courts.
The lack of enforcement by law enforcement, by frontline law enforcement, and in Texas, it's a mixed bag, right? We talked a little bit about that. Some agencies are totally supportive. They understand, they get it, and we work hand in hand with them. And there's still a lot of opposition, and that's what I'm speaking about, the opposition. When frontline law enforcement doesn't enforce a current valid court order, they enable the alienator, the opposing party, the other parent that's keeping the children away from mom or dad. They are encouraging that bad behavior because there's no consequences attached to it. And myself and the group, Texas 2503, we wholeheartedly believe if that conversation changed, the dynamics of that conversation changed out on site, when an officer were to arrive and say, look, Timmy needs to go with dad. It's his weekend. It's his time. Clearly, he's here trying to exercise his access and possession. Everything checks out. You can get in serious trouble. It is, in fact, a criminal state jail felony to interfere with child custody, to retain the child. And you could get in big trouble. With that conversation had, I think we would see a change. I think we would wholeheartedly see a change. The benefits to that, right? The other parent has a wake-up call and says, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. You know, I don't want to lose my job or catch a criminal case, or I better behave. You know, I can't use the child as a weapon anymore. I got to straighten up. Now, there's some extreme cases out there that's not going to work. I get that. There's some people that are just absolutely hell-bent on making life a nightmare for the other parent for whatever reason, right? Because they value that more than they do their own children. But if law enforcement were to, from an educational standpoint, have a conversation with the other parent and let them know, right, that they could get in big trouble, and let them know the state law, as many other states have this law as well, and here's the consequences attached with that, I think we would see a change in culture and attitude. And the benefits from that are not only does the child get to go with the other parent and you're encouraging the parent-child relationship, but for law enforcement themselves, they're going to tie up less resources on custodial exchange and standby, right? They're going to get less calls to go do these nonsense, you know, first, third, and fifth weekends. And when we ran numbers, it was kind of mind-blowing on how much time and percentage that these agencies were spending on custodial standby exchanges. Even in a city the size of San Antonio, I think we were looking at 34% of resources being tied up. You tell me that if the conversation changed, if the culture changed, if it came from frontline law enforcement, that if an officer was to speak about the state law that's already in place, that other parent wouldn't have a wake-up call. If they knew that there was consequences attached to their bad behavior, to their repetitive bad behavior, alienating behavior, I think a lot of these folks would straighten up. I think they would, you know, find another way to make your life miserable other than using the children. But, you know, we'd like to see that improvement. We'd like to see frontline law enforcement change the mindset, change the culture, stop redirecting broken parents back to court, because that's not helping. We've been doing that. We've been doing that for years, and it doesn't work. It's not working right now. Things are getting worse, you know. We need to fix this, and we need to address the real issues in its infancy. How does this start? And that's one of the ways we do it.
Investigating a deadly shooting that happened last night just northeast of downtown. Police responded to a family disturbance call around 9:30 in the 1800 block of Rogers Avenue, not far from North New Braunfels and I-35. They say a 35-year-old man was shot about 4 times in the chest and died on the scene. Police say they were close when the call came out and were able to catch the suspect and find the weapon.
Hello, everybody. I'm Orlando Marquez. I'm an advocate here in Texas. I live and reside in Travis County within Austin city limits. And I've been involved in family law reform for the past, I would say, about 3 going on 4 years. And I started off with the standard possession order, which gives the custodial parent about 80% possession, and then gives the non-custodial parent about 20% of possession time, depending on where exactly in the state you live in. But that's generally the rule when it comes to possession time. So this was a couple of years ago, I believe it was 2017, where I went into court after the relationship ended. I didn't have an attorney, didn't think I needed one, because usually when you have an attorney, it's because you have to protect yourself and protect your rights. But I hadn't committed no crime. I didn't have a history of any kind of family violence. I didn't have a history of any alcohol abuse, no drug abuse. Have any issues that would question my ability to parent my child. And I wasn't a stranger to my child at all either. So I didn't think there was a need for an attorney. I was just there to go in there and preserve my rights as a parent, as a fit parent. Under the law, I'm to be presumed fit, and it's the state's burden to prove that I'm an unfit parent, or perhaps maybe even a stranger to the child, which I was not. So I went into court without any issues. And in order for there to be some type of adjudication of rights, then there must be some type of controversy. One of the parties has to be a victim of some type of loss, and there was no such thing. So when I went into court, into family court, in the lower level, the district level, it was very surprising to find out that none of these protections that occur or apply in other areas of law actually applied within the family court. So despite being a fit parent, being involved in my child's life, despite being in court to protect my child's rights, the judge that presided over the merits of the case in the final hearings actually said that I was going to be placed on the standard possession order, and that the family code, in his opinion, just didn't think that 50-50 time sharing was a good idea. So that started my journey to the family law reform process. And it's been a couple of years. We made some progress, but it really raised a lot of questions because I work on the federal level, and I do some work, not as an attorney, but as a union representative regarding labor law. And it raised a lot of questions as to how does the state court or the judge, the state district judge, override fundamental rights in their courts without due process. There's a huge amount of violations that go on, and it really concerned me. And that's why, although after about 12 months, my ex, she got rid of her 3 family law attorneys. She got rid of 2 of the family law attorneys she had on record, and the 3 appellate attorneys that she had on record. So it really raised a lot of questions. After she was put in a financial bind, these attorneys just were not going to represent her anymore. So what that told me was that this process was not at all about children, and it was not at all about parents' rights. It was about making money. And that was a huge concern. That's why even after I got my 50-50 and I preserved and restored my child's rights, I made it a point to actually be involved in the legislative process and try to change these things and to educate parents on what they need to do in their own cases. So when I'm talking about the federal rights and fundamental rights, fundamental rights are those rights that are mentioned either within the Constitution or one of the amendments by the Supreme Court. And even though they're not mentioned, there's a lot of them that still exist. We have a lot of fundamental rights as parents that existed even before government. So even despite an extended string of Supreme Court decisions from the federal level upholding these fundamental rights of parents, and it's to the care, custody, and control of their children, and despite a very high standard that judges have to meet in order to terminate these fundamental rights for parents, myself as a father, we're just routinely denied due process when it comes to determining child custody after either separation or divorce. No judge in the state of Texas can claim they represent the child's best interest while simultaneously violating the children's rights. Being forced to appear before court regarding divorce or custody is not a request nor a sufficient trigger for the court or the judge to take over parental decision-making authority. Judges cannot simply assume that they have the authority to rule based on the child's best interest. I hear a lot of that from both parents, from attorneys, and from judges. But these judges first have to establish their authority to act against a parent who is assumed by law to be fit. And according to the Constitution, this is the federal Constitution I'm talking about, the judge should not use the standard that determines what is good for the child, but instead should use the narrow standard of what looks to what's in the best interest of the child. So in other words, the best interest should protect the rights of the child. The judge is only authorized to act upon the best interest of the child. It doesn't have the authority to do what's basically good for the child. And I see this every day through the live feeds that we see through Zoom and YouTube, where the judges are doing exactly that. And what is good for the child is much more expansive idea than what is in the best interest of the child. What is good for the child is subjective, and it requires a value decision from the judge. And when the judge does that as a state employee, then those value decisions become a reflection of the state's value decisions. Determining the best interest of a child requires weighing and balancing the individual constitutional rights of the parents and the child, because they're both the same. The court's authority to demand certain behaviors of parents has to be grounded in a determination of the risks that the child will face, not upon some subjective value-based reaction to what the judge thinks the parents are doing wrong. And the best interest of the child is only served when the parents protect the child's fundamental rights. The child is a minor. The child has no standing in our courts. They cannot petition the courts for anything. And the judge doesn't have statutory authority, absent parental unfitness, to advocate for the child's rights in court. But still, family courts, they typically rule as though parents like myself have no value except for our money. And I think a lot of fathers are gonna really feel this. These judges, they routinely minimize fathers who have not been proven to have committed any crime from their lives or any type of neglect towards their children. And then in turn, if the father objects to the process that the judge is imposing, the ex is coached by the attorneys to make more accusations. Judges and attorneys then call it a high conflict divorce or separation, and then give custody to the ex, and then declare that shared parenting won't work. If the father doesn't accept, is reprimanded by the court, by the judge, for not buying into the process. And trying to defend the dad against all these accusations, he's going to be denied the basic rights of a criminal defendant, such as a presumption of innocence and the necessity that the accuser actually provide proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And judges believe that the state is a parent of first resort and can, without any qualification, assume all rights of parents and then issue those rights unequally to either parent as they see fit. And this just simply cannot happen. There are several statutes within the family code that do not grant the judge's statutory authority to treat parents unequally simply because of their marital status. And judges assume they're always the primary custody of the child and only issue custodial authority to the parents. And this is simply untrue. The United States Supreme Court has clearly declared that judges may not assume away fundamental rights. There's a statute within our family code that doesn't allow a state judge or any state agency to remove fundamental rights from parents unless there's some type of parental unfitness that has been adjudicated through our courts. The judge has no default justification to make separation or divorce anything less than equal. If both parents are fit, there is no other consideration sufficient to overcome either parent's federally protected fundamental rights. And the perfect example is that In Texas, the parents who are still married, where there are no prior court orders, they have equal rights to their children. And judges disregard this despite the specifics in family code. I believe it's going to be 153003, and it's titled No Discrimination Based on Marital Status, which clearly states that the judge shall consider the qualifications of the parties without regard to their marital status. That means that if a parent or two parents in Texas are married and two parents in Texas are unmarried, the judge can't use marital status alone to decide which parent's going to be minimized and which parent's going to have more rights than the other. So how can a judge minimize any parental rights or even child's rights based on the marital status of parents when the family code says that they can't do it? That's a question that I'm able to answer through the family code statutes, through federal case law, and it is what I use to teach parents on how to preserve their rights when they go into court. And when fit parents walk into family court, how does a judge assume federally protected parental rights away? Did the parents have them before somebody filed suit, such as divorce? Are parental rights lost when one parent simply files for more custody? Did the parents lose their parental rights when they made a constitutionally protected right to divorce or to never even get married? The only legal way a judge can adjudicate parental rights is if those parents don't have them. So who legally removed them? The U.S. Supreme Court has established that the marriage relationship is independent from the parent-child relationship. They've made it clear that parental rights are tied to the individual. They're tied to mother, they're tied to the father, and they're also tied to the child. The U.S. Supreme Court has stated that children at birth have constitutional rights. And these rights, they're not tied to a marriage, and they are certainly not tied to divorce. So when both parents walk into court, I'll give you an example. All parents, when they walk into court and they have not been adjudicated unfit, they have a First Amendment free speech right to educate their child on their own moral, religious, and civic values, both directly through formal teaching and indirectly through observed example. And then each of their children has a concomitant right to learn and benefit equally from each parent. This teaching and learning is achieved both in formal teaching, instruction, doing things with the child, and through the child's observation of their parent in everyday life, like washing dishes, clothing, fixing things around the house, things like that. That's, children not only learn through verbal instruction, but through behavioral examples. So any reduction in child possession beyond the equal 50-50 split necessitated by parents living separately infringes this right. And each of those fundamental rights is protected at strict scrutiny. So where the judge makes some type of best interest determination that one parent will have greater opportunity to educate their child or spend more time with their child, speak more to the child, and the other parent's gonna have less opportunity to speak to the child and actually spend time with the child, the state is exercising a prior restraint on speech and violating the First Amendment of both the child and each parent. The right to live together as a family belongs to both the child who seeks to bring his or her father in and the father who seeks the entrance of the child. And this has been litigated, and there has been plenty of United States Supreme Court case law that mandates fundamental rights to be untouched unless some type of parental unfitness has been adjudicated in the lower courts, and it's just not happening. One of the things that we see an increase in, and we see this every year, is there's an increase in suicides as a result of family law. There's an increase in homicides as a result of family law. And there is a huge increase in the amount of filicide cases as a result of family law. And every legislative session where Texas does not pass a shared parenting statute that protects the rights of children and both parents individually, it only promises that there's going to be more homicides.
Marconi, police say a suspect has been arrested after a 30-hour manhunt.
Investigators here saying that it was several leads that took him directly to Otis Tyrone McCain. He's a 31-year-old San Antonio man. Well, he seemed apologetic as he was led by officers.
We got our first look at McCain when he was walked in handcuffs from SAPD headquarters, where this all began, to be booked behind bars.
Otis McCain faced reporters as he was being led to the courthouse last night, and he actually spoke to those reporters.
He had words of remorse and a still unthinkable explanation for the cameras.
What were you upset about, sir?
Society not letting me see my son. I lashed out at somebody that didn't deserve it.
Did you know Officer Marconi?
No, sir.
What were you doing down here on Sunday?
What was his fault that he wouldn't want to see his son?
It simply makes no sense. If he wants to see his child, now he's never going to happen.
And more suicides and more filicides as a result of failing to pass legislation that protects the family unit. There is no argument that family law results in more suicides, homicides, and filicides in all the areas of law combined in the state of Texas. That is a huge, huge concern for advocates like myself, that every legislative session we try to pass legislation to help these individuals and to prevent suicide, and to prevent homicides and filicides. And to see the efforts make a lot of progress and then fail at the last minute is very disheartening, because when it does fail, and it has repeatedly over the last few sessions, we know that somebody's going to perish as a result of Texas not protecting the family unit. There's going to be more suicides after the session. There's going to be more homicides after the session. There's going to be more filicides as a result. So I don't think a lot of people understand that every legislative session that ends without protections for the family unit, we're going to see more of these things occur.
Father tells me this family is actually from Mississippi, but the mother moved here to San Antonio during their custody battle for a job he claims never existed. Friday, April 24th, a judge finds it in the best interest of the children for their safety and welfare that the rights to decide their primary residence are awarded to Jason. Jason's monthly obligation to pay child support to Karina terminated. Karina is to surrender their 5-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son to Jason today, since the current arrangement is, quote, unworkable or inappropriate. The next day, Saturday, April 25th, Jason Dietering asks police to check on his kids and estranged wife here at the Sedona Ranch Apartments off Henderson Pass after they failed to show up for a custody exchange east of Beaumont. Police talk to neighbors, make repeated calls to Karina, but get no answer. A maintenance worker offers a key to the officers, but SAPD says officers did not have the authority to enter the apartment based on the information provided by the caller or neighbors. Records show Jason called police for 2 more welfare checks that weekend before going to the apartment himself Monday morning, April 27th.
The father of the children peered in through a crack in the blinds in the back of the house.
Police say 37-year-old Karina Kleberovna Sornoza Dietering shot and killed 5-year-old Clara, 3-year-old Robert, and her 68-year-old mother Galina before turning the gun on herself. Jason told police Karina had no history of violence, didn't
We've
send
seen this happen over the years in the past, where parents who have lost custody or they're involved in divorce have resorted to murder-suicide.
Which is also why it's very important that next session we get it to stop. We get the family code to actually protect the family unit, and we actually place parameters on these judges for minimizing one parent and minimizing the rights of these children. Because if the judge is not presiding over these cases with the intent of protecting the parent and child relationship, what are they there for? What are they doing? If the result is going to be that people are going to die and people are going to perish through suicides and homicides and filicides, then what are they doing? You would assume that the role of a judge on behalf of the state is to protect the parent and child relationship, but the result of what we have in our society, in Texas at least, is that these parent-child relationships are not being protected. So I think we need to do something very fast, because suicides, homicides, and an increase in filicides is something that no society is going to survive when these things are flourishing. And we need to stop it. We need to stop it as fast as we can.
So I've been trying to get my kids for a while now, and I already had a court date set for the 2nd of May for temporary custody while we go through the case of a full custody. She was served her paperwork and everything. Every time I would get my kids, they would come with me, like for the little bit of time I would get them, because I do work out of state. I would be home for a certain amount of time, and I would get my kids. As she would give them to me, a lot of the times I didn't get them. I didn't get to see them. They would always come back with bruises on their face, bruises on their legs, bruises on their back. There was always something, and there was always an excuse. It was, oh, she fell, or oh, they were playing around, or oh, your son jumped on her, this and that. But I never believed it. So I finally went out of my own way. I paid out of my own pocket for my attorney, and we're working that case as well. This past time I was home, I was there. My kids were supposed to be with me on Easter, and as I was told today, I didn't get to see my kids because Mark Anthony was going to beat their mom and leave her. So for that, I wasn't able to see my kids on Easter, and I still hadn't seen my kids for 3 months until yesterday, that I was able to see my daughter laying in her deathbed and my son Jesse at home wondering where his sister's at.
Okay, so teaching parents about these fundamental rights is crucial in order to have them preserve their fundamental rights in the lower courts, to challenge the restriction in the courts. And it also helps these parents when they contact their legislators and they begin their journey in family law reform and creating new statutes and drafting the words that are required and using federal case law and fundamental rights to make these arguments. They have already gone through the courts. The Supreme Court has churned out thousands of cases over the past 100 years that protects parents and protects child in their constitutionally protected rights to interact and associate with each other. So this is the path that I believe that parents need to do. They need to learn their fundamental rights. They need to make federal arguments in state court so that they can set these parameters up so that these judges don't continue to treat the unmarried different from the married. State statute doesn't allow a state judge to treat parents differently solely on their marital status. And there's also a state statute in the family code that says that children who are born to married parents and children who are born to unmarried parents have the same rights. So how does a state judge minimize the access that one child will have to one of their fit parents? And how do they actually, or where do we find the statutory authority that allows a judge to actually give that child more access to one parent and not the other? That's a violation of the child's fundamental rights. A lot of the times, the result of what's going on in these family courts is what's called parental alienation. And then when we have these minimized possession schedules, we see a lot of after effects that parents are taking through, and the abuse that is a result of the minimization of a parent and the child's rights that are not protected. Those possession orders are not enforced, and it causes a lot of damage. And a lot of times, the result from the children is we see that we see an emotional bar of one of the parents. Usually, it's the custodial parent who's violating these possession schedules, but that emotional bar from that parent is set really, really high, and the child will do absolutely everything they can to please that parent. They want to be helpful. They will fight their battles for them. They will set out on a mission to find out information from the other parent and then report back. They'll even lie to the parent about their other parent to make them feel better. They'll reconstruct history with the other parent as all bad so that they can please that over-emotional parent. Then eventually we start seeing that they reject contact with the other parent just to please them. They say they don't want to speak to them or spend time with them. They know how unhappy it makes them, even though the over-emotional parent says they want them to spend time with them. The child sees a look on their face. They pick up the non-verbal cues from that parent, and parental alienation starts to take a form in which the result is a lot of damage that's done to children that they take into adulthood, and is just simply not irreversible. Many times, we see these parents just repeat the cycle. So I think it's very important that we start to use a lot of federal arguments. We need to start preserving our fundamental rights in state court so that we can protect these children. And we also need to take these fundamental rights and federal case law into the offices of our legislators. We need to start speaking to the legislators about what the Supreme Court has mandated and what the Supreme Court has stated that our state judges cannot do. And as soon as we get that process started, better for these children. Thanks.
2020, he tried often to check on Jason and his sister.
All the time, I worry for my kids. All the time.
Sanchez says he fell ill with tuberculosis, a contagious bacterial infection.
The last time I get it to the hospital, I almost there for 2 weeks. I was really, really sick. I was spinning blood.
He says a home isolation order from the City of Houston Health Department left him unable to see the kids. Once he started feeling better, Sanchez says his ex-wife, Ashley Marks, kept them from him.
I tried to contact Ashley, and she all the time telling me that she's not at home, that she was in the hospital. She left Jason to friends.
Jason's father says Jason's mother should face the death penalty if convicted on the capital murder charge against her.
After listening to Mr. Marquez and the others, I have come to a conclusion that we have the ingredients for a very volatile situation. The police are not enforcing a state jail felony. The DAs are demeaning it. I understand some of the rationales of some of the DAs saying that they don't want to put mom in jail and so on and so forth. But they're placing emotions and they're placing individuals into a type of scenario where the formula of a volatile situation is there. We saw it with the shooting of the father over in Lubbock. If the police would have stopped it, if the police would have been there, if the police would have enforced it, probably that father would still be alive. There's a lot of other elements that occur. You know, you're dealing with people. A lot of them have lost everything. They lost financial support. They lost support from their families and friends. They're going down a rabbit hole. They're being pushed and egged on and ridiculed by those that are supposed to serve us. The elements are there. We will see a lot more violent crimes because a law is not enforced. When we came up with the resolution in Laredo, it was to ease the police from giving a citation to the mother for her to be able, or to the father that does not want to enforce visitation rights. So they get a citation, they go in front of the magistrate. It's $500 they have to pay. I guarantee you that the next time they're going to have the child ready. Now, a lot of people might say, and a lot of people would say, well, they don't want to let them go with the father because there might be some abuse by a relative or what have you. If that is the case, then in court, the mother brings it up to the magistrate, and the magistrate, by law, orders an investigation, a criminal investigation into that. So that's my understanding of the way it's fit bill, and that's my understanding of the way things work. So I think that if House Bill 4240 would have passed, we would lessen the emotional stress that's out there, the dangers of it, and people will also live life a little bit better. Okay? Now, the way it is now, you have police departments that are saying that they do not want to enforce interference with child custody law because they say that it's a civil matter. Well, let me put it to you this way. People, if no one is going to be unified as a common front, just like what happened with MAD, laws and the attitudes of the police and the district attorneys and the judges will continue being the same until everybody can unify itself under one common cause and literally start voting out district attorneys and judges and putting pressure towards the city with police captains that do not want to enforce this. That is the only way that things will change, period.